Cave diving is supposed to be about control. Control your air, control your buoyancy, control your panic when the world narrows into a tunnel barely wider than your shoulders, and the only thing keeping you alive is a hose and a tank strapped to your back. People call it extreme. I call it discipline. Down here, mistakes don't scare you, hesitation does. The water never forgives slow reactions. I've been a cave diving instructor for almost a decade. Remote lakes, underground rivers, limestone labyrinths most people will never hear of. Some divers chase reefs or shipwrecks. I chase silence. Real silence. The kind where your heartbeat is louder than your regulator. It used to calm me. Lately it feels more like a countdown. The place I operate now sits deep in a forgotten valley. Trees crowd the shoreline, hunched like they're guarding something ancient. Fog settles on the lake most mornings, thick enough that it feels like sky and water bleed into each other. My students call it haunting. They're not wrong. I didn't choose this site for beauty. I chose it because no one else did. On paper, it's ideal. Deep fresh water, extensive cave system beneath the cliff line, hidden entry points shaped by time and pressure. But caves like this have rules. Unwritten, unscientific rules passed down by instructors before me. I used to laugh at them too once. Now I repeat them like prayer. The most important one: never follow the extra light. It sounds ridiculous to people who've never been submerged in pitch-black stone corridors, where even your own bubbles seem alive. In tight underwater spaces, light is truth. Light keeps you oriented, breathing, moving. But sometimes, only in caves, you see another glow. Dim, flickering, drifting just out of reach, like someone else is down there with you. But there isn't. There never is. I tell students it's usually mineral reflections, distorted beams, silt scattering particles in strange ways. That's the official explanation, the one printed in textbooks. The unofficial one spreads quietly, traded in dive bars and remote campsites like ghost stories. The extra light is bait. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that waits. I never believed that part. Not until today. The morning started like any other. Air tanks lined in the shed, wetsuits hanging like damp skins, ropes coiled with mechanical neatness. The lake was glassy, the surface so still it looked artificial. I checked my gauges, inspected hoses, tested my mask seal. Habit brings comfort, and comfort breeds safety. I slid into the water, feeling that first shock of cold creep through neoprene. Not painful, just intrusive, like a hand pressing against my spine. Breathing settled. Weight belts hugged my hips. The silt below my fins puffed into pale clouds as I descended. The entrance to the cave system waits 20 feet down, disguised as a dark wound in pale stone. Most people would never notice it unless they were looking. But once you know it's there, you feel it every time you swim above it. Like gravity has a second direction pulling downward, inward. Sunlight vanished as soon as I crossed the threshold. That's always the moment when your brain screams to turn back. You ignore it or you quit diving forever. My light swept over smooth limestone, ancient dripstone formations, narrow passageways curling into deeper black. Familiar territory. A world I've learned to read like a road map. I followed the training line along the tunnel. The cave floor dipped gently, leading into a chamber low enough to brush my tank against the ceiling if I wasn't careful. I moved slowly, mindful not to disturb sediment. A careless fin kick can blind you for an hour. Everything felt routine, calm, predictable. Then, I saw it, barely visible, just a pinpoint of glow far down a passage that shouldn't have had any light source at all. A soft shimmer, pale like a bioluminescent organism pulsing underwater. It sat impossibly still, not moving with currents or vibrating like bubbles. My first thought was mechanical. Maybe a marker someone left behind. Maybe a dive team snuck in here recently without logging. But there was no reason for anyone else to be down here, and it didn't look like any marker I'd ever used. I hovered in place, heart rate climbing. My own light beam illuminated nothing but jagged rock and calm water in front of me. That glow came from deeper than I could see, too deep, too deliberate. I blinked, expecting it to vanish like optical noise. It didn't. It brightened, very slightly, like it sensed me. My throat tightened, breathing rapid. I forced myself to stay still, to watch, not react. Cave divers don't chase unknowns. We don't investigate mysteries. Curiosity kills faster than low oxygen. The glow pulsed again. My hand drifted to the guideline. Grip tightened. That old rule echoed in my mind, never follow the extra light. Not training superstition this time, but instinct. Something primal, cold, old, creeping into my bones. I backed away slowly, never turning my back to it until the glow dimmed and disappeared entirely. No movement, no shift, just gone as though it had never been there. The water felt heavier suddenly, pressing against me like the cave exhaled. When I surfaced, the fog had thickened over the lake. I climbed onto the dock, stripping gear with shaky hands. The tree line whispered under wind that hadn't existed when I went down. Something about the world felt skewed, misaligned. Instructors don't panic. But something in me was rattled, ancient and instinctual, something that remembered that humans aren't meant to be where sunlight can't reach. I dried equipment, hung tanks, tried to rationalize everything. Light reflections, sediment illusions, over-oxygenated hallucination, all convenient explanations. None of them sat right. Back in the cabin, I updated the logbook. Purposeful handwriting usually stabilizes the mind. Today it looked jagged, uneven. My final note was only 3 words underlined twice. Don't follow anything. Nothing unusual happened after that. No strange noises. No lights on the surface. But a weight stayed in my ribs. A quiet fear that only grows when routine cracks open just enough to show teeth. I had one beginner class scheduled tomorrow. Young recreational divers excited to explore. I used to envy that excitement. Now I dread it. They'll ask about the rules again, especially the one about the extra light. Tomorrow, I'll repeat it. Calm voice, steady tone. Pretend it's just another guideline for safety. But tonight, as the lake water shifts quietly outside my window, something tells me the rule isn't about safety. It's about survival. And whatever waits in those tunnels knows I saw it. And it might be waiting for me to come back. Morning light cut through the fog like it didn't want to touch the lake. Settling reluctantly across the water, I stood on the dock before sunrise, gear laid out, air tanks lined like silent guards. Routine steadies the mind. It didn't steady mine today. I expected the sensation from yesterday to fade after sleep, but instead it grew heavier. The memory of that light, soft, pulsing, unnatural, kept replaying in my head. There was purpose in it, not a reflection, not an illusion, something aware. And today I had to pretend everything was normal. A van crackled up the dirt road, gravel spitting under tires. 4 divers stepped out, advanced students. Confident faces, expensive gear, the type who practiced breathing exercises like meditation and treated their tanks like sacred relics. Good divers mostly. But seasoned confidence has a way of erasing fear before it should. They greeted me like this place was an adventure park. One of them, tall, lean, carrying a custom rig polished like jewelry. His arrogance radiated like warmth. That type always tries to lead. Caves do not tolerate leaders, only survivors. We loaded gear, checked tanks, tightened seals. I kept my voice steady through introductions and equipment inspection. No need to infect them with dread. Fear spreads faster than silt in zero-viz. Once everything was lined up, I gathered them near the water. The lake sat unnaturally still, as if holding its breath. I walked them through safety again. The real version, not the glossy brochure version people think they already know. Gas management. Halves, thirds, emergencies. Buoyancy control in constricted spaces. Maintaining visual contact with your buddy. Respect for the line, your lifeline, your way back to the surface world. Then I paused, because the next part always sounded ridiculous until it didn't. The caves here have one rule we treat as absolute, I said. You will hear it today, tomorrow, and every day you're here. They waited, curious. The arrogant one smirked like he expected a joke coming. Never follow an extra light. Confusion. A raised brow. A scoff from the tall one. He thought it was superstition. A scare tactic. The rest waited, unsure whether to laugh, so I explained calmly, clinically, like it was protocol, not folklore. In caves, light means life. Your light buddy's light, guideline markers, exit beams. Anything else? Ignore it. Light where there should be none means you're either lost, disoriented, or hallucinating, and if you pursue it, the cave takes you. Still awkward silence. A forced joke. Nervous laughter. Someone asked why anyone would ever see extra light down there at all. I just looked at the lake. They followed my eyes. The water reflected nothing, like it swallowed the sky whole. Don't worry why, I said. Just don't follow it. They nodded, some reluctantly. Arrogance dims faster underwater. The stone doesn't care about confidence, we suited up. Regulators clicked. Tanks strapped. We eased into the lake, cold, swallowing warmth instantly. I led them down the descent line. Bubbles murmured upward. Green water darkened to gray, then black. Inside the cave, my primary light flicked over stone. The beam carved tunnels into existence. Without light, there is no world down there, just crushing pressure and nothingness. They followed perfectly. Good trim, steady breathing, controlled finning. The arrogant one had technical skill, I'll give him that. Talent is always the first step toward disaster if respect doesn't follow. I checked each diver. Hands on guideline, eyes forward, lights steady. The cave's first chamber always feels like entering a mouth. Narrow throat, then sudden open void. They paused, mesmerized by the cathedral-like space. Stone domes arched overhead, covered in mineral scars older than civilization. They admired. I monitored, and then it happened again. A faint flicker deep in a side passage, barely perceptible. A glow not cast by any of our beams. Too soft, too far, too steady, like a lantern held by someone patiently waiting. My pulse stuttered. I forced myself not to react. Not to draw attention. Not yet. But the arrogant diver saw my focus shift, and curiosity lit his eyes like a match near fuel. He nudged forward half a fin, instinct tugging him toward it. I grabbed his harness, firm grip, unspoken warning. His eyes widened behind the mask, surprised at my force. I shook my head slow, deliberate. He hesitated. Then backed up. The glow dimmed, faded, gone. We continued the route. No deviations. No deeper chambers today. Controlled lines, slow ascension, proper deco, textbook. If someone reviewed the footage, they'd think it was a training demonstration, but I saw the way one student kept glancing into the darkness. I saw the arrogant one scanning for the light again like someone denied a secret, and I felt the cave watching us. A silent observer, we surfaced to calm skies. Birds chirped, like the world above had no idea what lay beneath. Back on land, they peeled suits and stretched muscles. Relaxed, casual. The arrogant one smirked again, wiping condensation from his mask. He made some comment about reflections, biology, optical tricks he didn't understand. Worse, he didn't believe. I forced a short technical briefing reviewing performance. My voice stayed steady, but my stomach churned. Everything inside me screamed to tell them what I really saw. What I knew. But instructors don't share fear. Fear turns divers reckless or frozen. Both drown. So I stuck to skill notes. Venting strategy. Buoyancy refinement. Gas pacing. As they packed gear, one quieter diver lingered. He hesitated before speaking, voice low. He said he thought he saw something too. Deep in the chamber. Not a flicker. Movement. A slow glide like a diver drifting with intention. But no bubbles. No silt trail. No gear outline. Something human-shaped without being human. His eyes were too calm when he said it. Not joking. Not dramatic. Simply stating a fact he didn't know how to process. I told him low visibility can distort perception. He nodded, but neither of us believed that explanation. After they left for their cabins, I sat at the dock watching the water breathe against wood. The sun dipped. Shadows stretched across the valley, long and hungry. I used to feel peace here after dives. Solitude. Mastery. Now I just feel observed. The trees rustled like whispers. The lake's surface tightened, smoothing unnaturally again. Still as glass, but watching. Waiting. The arrogant student laughed with someone inside his cabin, fearless still. That won't last. Confidence dissolves underwater faster than blood. Night came. I checked gear again. Every hose. Every valve twice, habit mixed with paranoia. A diver only prepares like this when they expect something to go wrong. Before sleeping, I wrote a new note in my logbook at the bottom of the page. Smaller than before, but underlined 3 times. They saw it too. I turned off the light. Darkness settled thick in the cabin. Thicker than it used to feel. In darkness, there's no difference between memory and warning. Somewhere outside, near the lake, water shifted without wind. I lay still and listened. Breathing. Not mine. Not human. Slow. Wet. Patient. Something waiting for me to come back underwater, and it had the patience of the dark. Training days always start with a lie. You pretend nothing is wrong. You pretend water is only water, caves are only rock, and everything in the dark is just absence, not presence. If you don't pretend, you don't get in the water. And if you don't get in the water, fear wins. I have to pretend better than anyone else. I'm the instructor. If I break, the whole group drowns with me. Morning air tasted metallic. The sky was clear, but the valley felt smothered. Too still, like nature was holding its breath again. My students laughed near the gear racks, tightening straps, checking computers. Casual bodies with no understanding of the things that live in silence. I ran through protocols. Breathing checks, buddy checks, line checks. Mechanical motions. Rituals of survival masquerading as training. The arrogant one, Ethan, kept spinning his flashlight in his hand like a toy. Too relaxed. The kind of diver who thinks rules are warnings meant for other people. We waded in. Water closed over my shoulders, cold creeping inside the wetsuit seam by seam. The lake's surface folded above my head, world cutting away. Silence swallowed us whole. Descend line. Equalize. Breath slow and controlled. The body adapts. The mind whispers. Vision narrows into a cone of light cutting through black water. Rock formations emerge like ribs inside some ancient drowned animal. Inside the cave, we moved single file. The guideline was our spine. Losing it means death. The chamber opened, stone arching overhead, silt resting untouched at the floor like fine gray dust. Perfect visibility. Too perfect, almost staged. I monitored each swimmer. Turns, trim, breathing rhythm, then a flicker. Not mine, not any of theirs. Same pale pulse as before. Deep, distant waiting. I froze mid-kick. No sudden movement. No bubbles rush. Just stillness. Thought splits in situations like this. One side rational, the other animal. Rational says ignore it. Primitive memory screams run. Ethan noticed my pause and turned his headlamp toward the far tunnel. I could almost feel curiosity radiating from him like heat. He stopped finning, suspended in water, staring like the darkness was whispering only to him. I motioned to continue. Firm, directive. Control the group. Keep momentum. Fear grows in still water like mold. We swam through the narrow connector passage. Ceiling dropped low, forcing us horizontal, arms tight to our sides. I counted heads when we emerged. One missing. Cold knifed up my spine. I spun, sweeping the beam back along the passage. Silt now drifting where it shouldn't. Someone kicked off line. Stupid. Deadly. A muffled thrash echoed in the chamber, distorted by water. Then light. Fast movement toward a side tunnel no one should be entering. Not a glow this time, not the alien pulse, but flashlight beam. Panicked, searching, flickering wildly. A student was breaking discipline. Maybe chasing something. Maybe running from something. No shouting underwater. No calling names. Only action. I signaled for the group to anchor to the line and advanced alone, a knot tightening like rope inside my chest. He wasn't far. I found him near a narrow slit in the rock where the chamber funneled into darkness. He was shaking, thrashing lightly, tether clipped but body angled toward the crack like he'd been trying to push inside. His mask was fogged, breath rapid and sharp through the reg. I grabbed his harness, forced eye contact. His pupils were blown wide, not fear-pinned, entranced. His hand still stretched toward the crevice, fingers twitching like he'd been reaching for something. I followed his gaze, and there, inside the split rock, faint like memory, that same impossible glow hovered. Pale, patient, waiting. It was so deep in the slit it shouldn't have been visible, yet it pulsed steady in the black like a heartbeat in stone. It felt intentional. A lure. A hunter doesn't move fast. A hunter waits for you to come to it. I pulled him away, hand firm in his harness, anchor line brushing my palm like reassurance. He resisted for one terrifying moment, one tiny second where I could feel his body leaning toward the glow, ready to give himself to it. Then alarm broke in his eyes and he kicked back with me. We returned to the main line, group intact. No one dead, but something had changed in that water. Back on the surface, he tore off his mask and vomited lake water onto the dock, face ghost white, hands trembling uncontrollably. He swore he saw another diver, said he saw a guide light ahead of him drifting like someone was leading the group deeper, and he thought we were going off plan. He followed it instinctively, thinking it was me, but it wasn't me. I didn't tell him he wasn't the first to say that. That divers before him saw guides in these caves too, that some followed and none came back. I told him stress can create illusions underwater, pressure, darkness, constricted spaces. He nodded, wanting to believe. His regulator, though, when I checked it, was coated with strange residue. A thin, slick film like algae, but not organic, iridescent. Cold to touch, Equipment doesn't grow things in 1 hour underwater. It just doesn't. Later, alone in the equipment shed, I replayed his chest cam footage. Normal at first. Controlled breathing. Good positioning. Then his light caught something moving ahead. Just a shimmer, like pale fingers curling around stone before retreating. Then his camera jerked, body lunging toward the crack. No sound, only rapid bubbles. And one frame, just one, where the camera caught a glint inside the crevice. Not a beam. Not a silt scatter, an eye, round, pale, reflective, not blinking, watching him. I closed the laptop. My heartbeat felt wrong, uneven, stumbling inside ribs. I sat on the bench staring at my own fins still dripping onto concrete. Something lives in that cave. And it doesn't push. It beckons. Tonight, when I tried to sleep, I woke to the faint sound of water. Not dripping, breathing. A deep, slow inhale, like something surfacing just below my cabin window. I lay in the dark, eyes on the ceiling, too afraid to look outside. And the whole time a single thought repeated like a curse. It doesn't just lure underwater. It waits. And it learns who sees it. Sleep didn't come. I drifted in and out of shallow, anxious half-dreams, the way divers float between depth and surface when nitrogen fogs the brain. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that pale eye in the crevice, not glowing, not alive in any familiar sense, just aware, like it had always been there and I had finally noticed it noticing me. By dawn, I gave up on rest and walked to the lake. Mist spread across the surface like a living skin. The world was quiet again, unnaturally quiet. No birds, no insects, water flat like polished stone. Fear isn't loud. It's silence that does it. Silence thick enough you can feel pressure in your teeth. I sat on the dock, elbows on knees, staring at the water. For the first time in years, the sight didn't calm me. It felt like staring into an open grave. I kept replaying yesterday, the shimmer, the student almost crawling into the rock, that eye. I had never seen anything like it in hundreds of dives, and yet, some primitive part of me whispered that I had, that humanity had, that every culture has a story about lights beneath water, voices in caves, watchers in the dark, just myth, until it isn't. When the students emerged from their cabins, they moved quietly, like sleep hadn't found them either. Even Ethan, the arrogant one, had lost some shine. He didn't joke this morning. I told them no dives today. Equipment maintenance, debrief, paperwork, they didn't argue. That told me more than panic would have. Fear disguised as practicality. They scattered to gear, benches, and notes. I headed to the storage room attached to the old boathouse. Dust coated the shelves. Local history sat in rusted metal file boxes and sun-bleached logbooks. I had skimmed them once when I first arrived, searching for geological maps and hydrology data. Back then, the stories tucked between charts felt like folklore. Today, folklore felt like warning. The boathouse air tasted stale. Damp pages stuck when I opened them. I sifted through scribbled dive notes from decades ago, pressure readings, maps, water clarity charts. Then deeper into handwritten logs older than digital anything, labeled simply, cave events plus traditions, not science. Folklore. I flipped pages. Do not chase lights. Water carries memory. Do not answer voices. If you see yourself in the dark, surface immediately. I paused at that one. Human reflection underwater isn't rare. Air pockets, mask glare. But these weren't safety steps. They were rules carved by fear. Further down, an attached newspaper clipping. Diver lost in local caverns. Body never recovered. Year stamped 1979. Next to it, another from the 1940s. Then, one handwritten entry dated 1923 describing miners chasing lamps that weren't lamps. I swallowed hard. Humans have been seeing things down there long before modern gear. One brittle notebook caught my eye. Leather cover cracked, pages yellowed and curled. A name etched on the front, Rowan Hale. I recognized it. He had been one of the early cave cartographers in this region. A diver before diving certification meant anything universal. A pioneer or a fool, depending on how many ghosts you believe caves keep. Handwriting neat at first, then shakier over entries. Found new chamber, crystal formations. Something moved where no current exists. Next page, saw light again. Not reflection, lantern-shaped, led deeper. Did not follow. Then a later entry, shaky ink bleeding. I heard breathing behind me. No divers present. Left immediately. And the last almost carved into the paper from pressure. If it wants you to follow, you must not look directly. It feeds on attention. A chill crawled over my arms. This man dove before LED beams, before high lumen lights, before our modern illusions. What he saw without technology to blame. A soft sound outside made me freeze. Footsteps on wet wood, slow, deliberate. I held still. Breath shallow. Just a student heading to rinse gear. I let out air slowly, but adrenaline stayed, electric in my muscles. I turned one more page, a sketch, rough, frantic pencil strokes. A humanoid shape, elongated and pale. Limbs too long, no regulator, no tank. A diver shape without equipment, or something mimicking one. Under it, scribbled words. They learn shapes. My stomach dropped. Something clicked in my memory. Yesterday, when the student swore he saw a diver ahead. A guide light, not a person. A lure. I closed the book, fingers trembling slightly. When evolution rewards patience, you get predators that don't chase, just wait. The ocean has them. The deep has them. Why not caves where sunlight never belonged? Stepping outside, the lake looked wrong again. Not water, just black glass reflecting nothing. My students stood at the benches, but every head turned toward the lake at once, as if drawn to some distant sound none of us could actually hear. Fear works like gravity. I shook it off. Tried to anchor myself again in rules. Breath check. Stay rational. Do not feed panic. Random thought intruded. Nights I'd woken because I felt watched. I always assumed stress. Maybe memory. I returned logs to shelves. But Rowan's book, I couldn't put it back. My hand refused. Knowledge is weight, but ignorance kills faster. I slid it into my pack. Walking back to the dock, I saw damp footprints on the planks. Not fresh enough to be mine. Not spaced like someone walking casually. More like someone had stood there for a long time. Toes pointed toward the water like listening. Everyone was still behind me. No one else had come this way yet. Wind rippled through trees above, faint but forced, like air relocating itself rather than flowing naturally. The lake surface tightened again into unnatural stillness. Behind me, a student called out asking if we'd dive tomorrow. I forced a steady reply. My voice felt foreign, leaving my throat. Later, during gear checks, Ethan approached, trying to mask unease behind bravado. Said yesterday's incident must have been nitrogen narcosis, but his voice didn't land with certainty. Divers can lie to others. The problem is the water never lies back. It only answers. When the group left for lunch, I sat alone with my logbook and Rowan's journal. My hands moved on their own, adding a new line. Lights appear only when watched. That wasn't entirely true. I hadn't been looking the first time. It wanted to be seen. But the second time, it waited for my eyes. That means awareness, intent. The cabin walls creaked like someone pushing them from outside. No footsteps, just the sensation of pressure, the kind that comes from depth, not distance. I stayed still. Breath slow. Fear can smell movement. Eventually, the pressure lifted as if whatever brushed the world here had drifted away again. I don't scare easily. The cave cured me of normal fear a long time ago. But this is something different. Fear that doesn't ask you to run. Fear that invites you to come closer. By evening, the students were joking again. Thin laughter stretched over frayed nerves. Humans adapt too quickly to danger they don't understand. I kept watching the lake, waiting to see if it would breathe again. I know something ancient dwells in that cave. Not supernatural, nature is older than superstition. Something evolved in darkness. Not hunting the way predators hunt flesh, but attention. Awareness, curiosity. The water is quiet tonight, too quiet, which means it is thinking. And thinking things always hunger. I closed Rowan's journal and whispered inside my own skull, a thought I did not want to write. I think it knows my name. By morning, dread had settled into my bones like the cold that creeps under neoprene. Not sharp panic, worse. A steady hum under my skin, like a warning current tugging at you just enough to feel, but not enough to prove. The valley looked normal again. Sunlight broke across the tree line. Birds returned to call from branches, and for a moment nature pretended nothing hunted here. Caves do that too. They lull you into believing the danger was imagined, that the darkness is just absence, not a mouth. But I know caves. They never give comfort for free. Today was certification day. Normally, the final dive is a celebration. Students demonstrate mastery, surfacing like they've conquered an ancient trial. But the group moved differently this morning, quieter, movements sharp, laughter forced around the edges. They felt it too, even if they wouldn't say it. Ethan, though, he'd found his swagger again. The arrogant shine had returned to his eyes. He stretched wetsuit sleeves like a man warming up for competition. Maybe sleep had scrubbed his fear, or pride had suffocated it. Some divers drown before they ever enter the water. Ego fills their lungs first. I checked gear meticulously. Mine first, then theirs. Fingers ran across hoses, valves, clips, like I was reading Braille for danger. Nothing visibly wrong, but the moment my palm touched the guideline reel, a cold ripple climbed my spine. The rope felt wrong, not wet or frayed, just wrong, like it had been held by something that didn't know how to hold. I pulled my hand away too fast. Nobody noticed. We entered the water. Descent smooth, practiced. Light beams cut into the depths, slicing the water into geometric shapes. We passed the entrance threshold, rock jaws closing above. Every dive begins with surrender, to pressure, to darkness, to the narrow space between life and drowning. Inside the first chamber, the world felt too still. I checked my divers, movements crisp, breathing controlled. And yet, something else moved in the water, a subtle shift, a whisper of current where no current should exist. The cave wasn't empty. We advanced deeper, through the long corridor where limestone folds like frozen waves. Sediment rested untouched, still water, perfect clarity, always a lie. It means no one has disturbed it in a very long time, or something intends to keep it that way. Near the second junction, the glow appeared. Not bright, not dramatic, just a soft shimmer far ahead, as if another diver hovered with perfect stillness. Pale, patient, familiar now, like a scar you keep reopening. I froze. Signaled hold. 3 lights went still. Ethan did not. He tilted his head, mesmerized. The way animals freeze when they hear a sound, their blood remembers. Then he finned forward. Small movement, but deliberate, like the decision was made somewhere deeper than thought. I grabbed his harness. Hard. He jerked, startled, then glared through his mask. Confusion first, then defiance, then that awful, dangerous curiosity. He wanted to break off. He wanted to see what waited. I shook my head, forceful. Rule number 1 burned in my skull. Never follow the extra light. He pulled away. Not panic, willful. As though something whispered to him that I was the obstacle, that the glow was truth, and I was the liar. I could see it in his posture. Every diver has a breaking moment where caution dissolves and instinct flips. Fight, flight, or fascination. And fascination is the deadliest one. He swam 2 meters beyond formation before I could stop him. In caves, 2 meters is the difference between rescue and recovery. I lunged, grabbed his line tether, hauled back with force. He thrashed, not fear, frustration, like I was denying him something beautiful, like the lure had already hooked his mind. When he finally relented, the glow faded, almost as if it realized it lost him. We aborted the dive. Protocol says never punish the group for one diver's mistake. Survival says otherwise. As we surfaced, sunlight broke again across the lake. It felt wrong, like optimism forced over rot. I pulled my mask off, breathing air that felt too heavy. Ethan ripped his regulator out and snapped at me, loud, angry, voice cracking with something deeper than ego. He accused me of hallucinating dangers, of limiting them, of sabotaging his dive. He said he saw beauty, not threat. His words rattled, not because of the meaning, but because they sounded like someone else. Thoughts not his, echoed phrases divers from older logs had written before disappearing. One student quietly asked what he saw down there. His answer chilled the blood in my veins. He said it didn't feel like light. It felt like attention, like something noticed him first, like it chose him. The others shifted, exchanging uneasy glances. Jokes died in their throats. Arguments ended. Fear makes cowards or believers. Today it made believers. We broke down gear in silence. Isolation wrapped the lake again. No wind, no bird call, no ripple. Stillness pressed against us like a second pressure layer. Back at the cabin, I inspected Ethan's equipment. His dive computer reading was normal, but algae-like residue smeared his tank valve, same iridescent sheen as the student from before. Impossible growth rate, no natural explanation. When I lifted his regulator to check it, water dripped from the mouthpiece thicker than lake water, as if the cave water clung, reluctant to leave. A tremor moved through my hand. Not fear, confirmation. The cave wasn't indifferent, it was choosing. Later, as evening fog settled, Ethan stood at the lake's edge alone, staring at the water like waiting for it to speak. I wanted to call to him, to break whatever silent thread tied him to the dark. But I froze. His posture was wrong. Too still. Too balanced. Like he was already partially underwater in his mind. Eventually, he walked back to his cabin, but not like a man leaving something behind, more like someone waiting to return. When night came, I couldn't rest. I kept hearing the faint sound of shifting water outside. Not splashing, moving, like something large turning slowly beneath the surface. I wrote a line in the logbook. It doesn't hunt. It invites. And below it, smaller, Ethan has already accepted. Fear is loud when you run from it. But this isn't running fear, this is the fear that whispers you're already caught. You just don't know when you'll be pulled under. Every diver I've ever lost left a scar. Training accidents, unpredictable currents, entanglements, each one chisels the soul. But there's a particular kind of dread when someone doesn't die in a place, they vanish into it. No body, no proof, just absence. Absence is heavier than death. Ethan didn't show up in the morning. His gear was missing. His room empty. Boots gone. His wetsuit hanger barren. The others assumed he woke early, maybe preparing to prove himself again. But I knew. There's a look people get before the cave chooses them, a quiet surrender. I saw it in him yesterday. He didn't sleep last night. I could feel it. The same way the lake feels disturbances before they break the surface. His disappearance wasn't rebellion. It was answer. I ran to the dock. Rope disturbed. Ladder damp. A single fin strap rested on the wood, torn or slipped, unclear. But what froze me was the water. It wasn't rippling, it was trembling. Tiny concentric shivers spreading outward as if something massive had just submerged. Slow, deliberate movement, not panic. Something entering, not surfacing. I scanned the lake. No Ethan, no bubbles, no gear. But deep under the surface, a faint pulse of pale light shimmered and disappeared, like a lung exhaling in the abyss. I had seconds to decide. Call for help. Or dive. I chose dive. Some choices aren't choices at all. Descending alone is breaking protocol. Going after someone who already followed a lure is suicide. But leadership means you drown with your failures if you can't stop them. The water felt colder than ever. 30 feet down, sound vanished completely. Darkness wrapped around me like a second skin. Pressure pushed against my ribcage. Not depth pressure, something heavier. Psychological, predatory. I followed the guideline, beam sweeping. Nothing but stone, ancient and patient. But vibrations in the water grew faintly rhythmic like heartbeat patterns echoing through limestone. At 50 feet inside the cave, I found it. Ethan's reel line, floating, cut clean, not torn, not frayed, severed. A diver does not cut their own lifeline underground unless madness or manipulation takes hold. I followed floating debris, glove, loose strap, camera knocked sideways in the silt. My pulse tightened. Ethan wasn't sloppy. This was struggle, not error. The water in front of me moved, not current. More like displacement. A mass shifting just beyond range. My light hit stone, then void, then a faint glow hovering just ahead, silent and steady. It didn't flicker this time. It watched, the darkness around it rippled. I know when I'm being observed. Every diver does. There's a moment when the environment stops being environment and becomes something else. Eyes behind nature. I felt it then. A shape moved in the periphery. Slow, long-limbed, too fluid for human motion. Not fish, not eels. Something that learned movement in water before bones mattered. Instinct screamed retreat. Reason whispered follow. The cave didn't just want Ethan, it wanted me too. I backed away, inch by inch, forcing discipline over panic. You never rush in caves. Rushing means stirring silt. Stirred silt means blindness. Blindness means drowning. As I turned, something brushed my fin, light contact. Testing, curious, like a fingertip. My lungs spasmed. Fight response surged, but I kept my kicks slow. Controlled, never show panic. Predators taste fear first, it didn't grab me. It could have. Whatever touched me didn't want capture. It wanted patience. I surfaced slower than I ever have. Breaking the water felt like breaking through silk glue. The air above tasted wrong, still metallic like post-storm ozone without a storm. I climbed the dock ladder in silence. When my regulator left my mouth, breath hit the air like a confession. The sky looked normal. Morning sun. Birds returning. Surface peace like a sick joke. I didn't call authorities. What would I tell them? Diver vanished while chasing mythical cave light? Something cut his line? Something touched my fin? There are tragedies logistics can explain. This was not logistics. This was consumption. I returned to the cabins. Students gathered outside, confused by my expression before I spoke. They saw it immediately, absence. Grief without a body. Panic without noise. I told them Ethan was gone, shock, horror, then denial. One student swore they saw him walk near the water at dawn. Another thought they heard splashing. Someone whispered he might surface later. I didn't correct them. For their sanity, hope needed to survive a few hours longer. Inside the gear shed, I reviewed Ethan's camera footage. It began stable, clean descent, steady breathing, flawless trim. His skill never faltered, but then his light caught something moving ahead. Not the glow, a silhouette. Human shape, mask-like head, hands braced against stone except the proportions were wrong. Torso too long, legs too narrow, movements too soft like gravity didn't apply. He swam toward it willingly, not panicked. Then the camera shook, thrashing, flailing, sudden bubbles screaming upward. A shadow filled the frame, followed by a smear of darkness and one unmistakable sound, a wet dragging pull. Not ripping, pulling. Like something drawing him through water, not biting, not tearing, retrieving. The final frame froze on a single image. Ethan's face reflected in his own mask. Blank, peaceful, eyes empty as if already elsewhere, then static. I closed the laptop. My heartbeat didn't slow for minutes. By sunset, students huddled in groups, whispering. Fear finally unified them. They asked to leave. But trucks wouldn't start. Keys turned, engines stuttered and died. Phone signals dropped. Radios hissed static like muffled breathing. As though the valley refused to let consequence escape. I stood alone by the waterline. Fog rolled in early, thick and low. The surface trembled again. Small ripples, too rhythmic to be breeze. When I closed my eyes, I heard it. Not speech. Not words, just cadence, a call without language. The lake was summoning. Nature doesn't lure. Nature waits. But whatever lived here violated nature. It beckoned, and I knew with terrifying certainty Ethan wasn't dead. He was being changed. And he wanted someone to follow. I felt watched long after I turned away. The valley breathed with me, or instead of me. And the darkness wasn't empty now. It had a face, and I would see it again. The human mind always searches for sound when it's afraid. We try to hear voices in chaos, meaning in echoes, warnings in the wind. But water doesn't speak unless something moves through it. And this morning the lake sounded wrong, barely audible but constant. A low, rhythmic movement beneath the surface. Not waves, not current. Breathing. Slow and patient, like lungs practiced in drowning and returning. The students stayed inside their cabins. No chatter, no clinking tanks, no dragging suits across benches. A silence so complete it felt like even the insects held still waiting. I sat on the dock, mask resting beside me, watching, listening, trying to convince myself that what I heard wasn't real. But it didn't stop. The lake was breathing. I couldn't leave. Cowardice kills in caves. Hesitation kills on the surface too, just slower. Leadership required action. Even if action felt suicidal, Ethan was gone. Something took him. Or claimed him. That meant I had to face the cave again. I told myself it was for closure, for answers, or to prevent another loss. But truth lives in the quiet moments. I went back because I needed to know if I had seen a predator or an invitation. I suited up alone. No buddy line. No second light. No safety diver watching the surface. I broke every rule I taught because some rules only protect you from nature. This was not nature. Descending again felt heavier than any dive in my life. Each kick downward felt like stepping deeper into the gravity of something ancient. My light cut through the murk, revealing nothing but limestone walls and tunnels that curled like the rib cages of dead gods. At the first chamber, the water vibrated. Not movement, vibration. Sound waves inside stone. A whispering sensation, not in my ears. Inside my head, faint murmurs like someone speaking loudly underwater, but muffled by pressure. Just enough cadence to mimic voice but no language. You cannot hear voices underwater without hallucination, or without something pressed against your skull. A light flickered in the dark, not where Ethan vanished. Different tunnel entirely, soft shimmer, suspended mid-water. Waiting. I didn't move toward it. Instead, I angled my beam toward the tunnel walls. No markings from divers, no silt disturbed. But something else. Long grooves carved in rock, subtle but unmistakable. Smooth. Intentional. Like fingers dragging across stone for centuries. Curiosity and terror are siblings. One always holds the other's hand. Today, terror led, but curiosity still followed. I swam deeper. The whispering grew. Still no words, just the shape of sound that felt like memory. Like recognition. Then it changed. It stopped whispering to no one. It whispered to me, a faint distortion. My name, a breath that almost formed it. Impossible underwater. Impossible through stone. But the mind doesn't lie about dread. It only lies about comfort. The glow ahead pulsed once. Like acknowledgement. Something moved behind me. I spun, beam slicing water. Nothing but black. But the current shift was real. Something displaced volume, not fish. Not diver, larger, slower, intentional. I retreated, careful not to silt the floor. Silt clouds kill faster than teeth. I held the guideline, pulse beating in my fingertips. Another whisper. Closer. No breath in water, yet I felt air brush my cheek inside the mask. Then, movement not seen, felt. The water touched me, a pressure around my calf brushing neoprene, gentle at first like tracing curiosity, then firmer. A test, not an attack, a touch that said, "You are here." I forced myself not to kick. Panic flutters. Panic reveals weakness. Predators taste panic like blood. Slow retreat. Controlled breathing. Mind chanting the rule like prayer. Never follow the extra light. The glow didn't pursue, it waited. I surfaced slower than ascent rate charts recommend. The silence above felt wrong. Like surfacing into a room after someone stopped speaking mid-sentence. Sunlight greeted me. Too bright. Too warm for what lurked below. It felt offensive that the world above still followed rules. I stripped my mask. The lake was calm again. No tremors, no breath, like nothing had moved. But as I stood on the dock, water dripping from my suit, I heard it. A voice, not whispering now, calling, muffled, distant but unmistakable. Ethan's voice, echoed through the valley as if coming from a radio left underwater. Help me. My stomach dropped. Logic rebelled, sound doesn't travel like that. But horror isn't about what's possible, it's about what refuses to be impossible. One student burst out of a cabin, eyes wide, shaking, swearing they heard Ethan too. Another followed, terrified, backing away from the shoreline. Then the lake surface rippled, not like disturbance, like something rising, then changing its mind, sinking again. A tease. I should have reassured them. Told them stress causes auditory hallucinations, but I couldn't lie convincingly anymore. We were past logic. We gathered inside the largest cabin, doors shut, blinds down. The wind outside felt wrong. Cold then warm, like exhalations instead of weather. One student asked if Ethan could still be alive. Another whispered that caves don't just take, they convert, change, consume. I stayed silent. I had no comfort left to give. The youngest of them asked if this place was haunted. Haunting requires death. This wasn't death. Death is merciful, predictable, natural. This was something older than death. Night came early again. Fog thick enough to mimic breath. The lake's surface glowed faint for a second, like moonlight trapped underwater. But the moon wasn't in the sky. We locked ourselves in. Shadows. Outside moved without footsteps. Order. Tapped the cabin wall rhythmically like knuckles on wood. Like someone knocking from underneath the floorboards of a flooded house. Tap, 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 then stillness. Silence so complete it felt like thought alone could shatter it. My logbook lay open. I wrote one line. There are voices beneath drowning. They do not call for rescue. They call for company. And another below it, hand trembling for the first time in years. Ethan isn't asking for help. He's asking us to follow. I barely slept. When dawn finally arrived, it didn't feel like morning. Light had returned, yes, but not warmth. The air outside was sharp and metallic, the kind of cold that clings to lungs instead of skin. The world didn't reset overnight. Whatever moved beneath that water, whatever called to us, it didn't sleep. Neither did I. The students emerged slowly, like survivors after bombardment. No excitement now. No bravado. They walked carefully, eyes scanning tree lines, lake surface, even shadows between cabin slats. The illusion of safety had evaporated, leaving only instinct and dread. I brewed coffee with shaking hands. When you've spent enough time diving, you learn the difference between adrenaline tremor and primal fear. This was the latter. The kind animals feel before storms that never touch the sky. We gathered on the dock not to dive, but because water had become a gravitational center. You don't walk away from a predator's den. You stand near it because looking away feels more dangerous than watching. None of us spoke at first. Fear takes language hostage. Finally, one asked if we should leave, engine still dead, phone still silent, radio still static. The valley wasn't letting us go. Not yet. I checked my equipment again, pretending it was routine. It wasn't. My hands moved with purpose, planned, steady, not debating. I was going back down, not for rescue. No illusions left about Ethan's fate. And not because duty demanded it. Something deeper pulled at me, quiet but insistent. Not curiosity either. Something older. Recognition. The cave had revealed itself. A hunter showing territory. And now I had to see the truth because ignorance here wasn't safety. It was bait. I told the group to stay inside and lock the doors. They didn't argue. Survival instinct had finally outrun pride. Wetsuit again. Mask, tank, gloves. Ritual armor against a world not meant for us. The lake accepted me without resistance. Cold wrapped around me like a second body. When I descended, the surface closed above like lips sealing shut. The water was clearer today. Visibility unnaturally crisp. As if the cave wanted me to see. That alone chilled me more than silt storms ever had. At the first chamber, I hovered, breathing slow, letting the silence settle. Nothing moved. No glow, no whisper. That almost frightened me more. Absence can be a lure too. I continued to Ethan's last known point. His cut line still floated faintly, tethered to nothing. Around it, silt had settled in patterns that didn't match natural water movement. Circular, disturbed. Like something large had coiled there, waiting, then slipped away. My beam swept deeper. Along a wall I had passed dozens of times. Smooth limestone, flowstone ridges, familiar terrain. But then my light caught something wrong. A slit in the wall I had never seen before, not wide, barely shoulder width. Hidden in shadow. If the previous days had shaken sediment, maybe the cave had shifted. Or maybe it had always been there and only now allowed itself to be noticed. A diver once told me, caves choose when to open. I laughed then. I don't laugh now. I approached the narrow passage, heart pounding against regulator rhythm. Training screamed retreat. Instinct whispered danger. But something else, something colder, pulled me forward. Inside the crack, the world changed. The stone wasn't smooth anymore. Rough, scored, scratched, not by erosion, by fingernails, dozens, hundreds. Gouges in rock, desperate claw marks etched into limestone like trapped divers tried to dig their way out. Or deeper in. My beam passed something on the floor. Small, round, opaque. A tooth. Human. Nearby, a rusted dive buckle. decades old. And another, different era gear, a faded name tag half-rotted M. Coulson, I knew that name. A diver who vanished here in the early 90s. They never recovered his body. Silence and river current took the blame. There were more remains, bone fragments wedged between rock teeth, a broken mask lens, a wetsuit scrap fused into stone by pressure and time, evidence of consumption. Of transformation, this cave didn't kill divers. It absorbed them. A sound vibrated through the passage. Not noise, pressure shift, a pulse. The water around me grew heavier, like breath filling a lung. No glow yet. But anticipation thickened the dark. I moved further in, slow, deliberate. My hand brushed a stone ridge. It felt warm. Heat in submerged limestone is wrong, impossible. Heat means circulation. Circulation means organism. The cave was alive. Then my beam revealed a cluster of objects deeper inside. Tanks, old lights, rusted knives, weight belts, gear from decades past. A hoarder's den of swallowed explorers, a graveyard without corpses because corpses don't stay corpses here. As I reached toward a cracked dive slate, hoping to see a final message, something brushed my shoulder. Not rock, not water movement. Touch, gentle, curious, like fingertips tracing fabric. I spun, finning backward, pulse roaring, nothing in my light. But the silt behind me swirled in a slow spiral, as if something massive had just shifted backward into shadow, observing, receding, waiting. I backed out of the slit. Every instinct vibrated, primal and ancient. Turn around, do not expose your back. But caves have rules, panic kills faster than predators. If I stirred silt, I would die blind, eaten by stone and something older than stone. At the chamber entrance, the whisper returned. Louder now. Beneath hearing. A resonance more felt than heard. Calling, beckoning. Never follow the extra light. No light appeared this time. Which terrified me more. Whatever lived here didn't need bait now, it had shown itself. It had shown what it keeps. It knew I wouldn't run far. Fear tethers stronger than curiosity ever could. I surfaced into daylight that felt hostile in its brightness. The world mocked with normalcy again. Trees, breeze, faint sunbeams across water. Like nothing had shifted below. But I emerged different, carrying proof. Not just fear, evidence. The students saw my face before I spoke. Panic flickered. One stepped back, gripping the cabin door. Another whispered a prayer. They didn't ask what I saw. They could read it in the silence I brought with me. I collapsed my gear, hands trembling only when I tried to unclasp the last buckle. Not from exertion, from knowing. I wrote one line in the logbook. It doesn't hide bodies. It keeps them, and after a long pause, something touched me. It wasn't cold. When night fell again, voices echoed faint outside, unmistakable, familiar, wrong. Not Ethan's alone now, multiple, blended, layered, human, then not. The lake surface stirred once softly like a slow inhale. Something waits, and it knows we are trapped. By the next morning, the valley felt smaller, as if the tree line had crept closer overnight. Not physically, just presence, pressure. Like the world around us was closing its hand, deciding how tightly to squeeze. The students gathered outside the cabins early. No gear, no wetsuits, no excited chatter, just backpacks, pale faces, and eyes that moved like prey watching shadows. Nobody needed to say it, they were done. Whatever training or certification they came here for no longer mattered. They wanted out. And for a moment, seeing them clustered together like evacuees waiting for rescue boats, I almost let myself believe escape was possible. That we could drive away, leave this cursed place behind, forget water that breathes and caves that hunger, pretend we never saw lights that think. But hope is a crueler predator than anything in the dark. They tried the trucks again. Engines turned over, coughed, died, same as yesterday, before they thought it was mechanical. Now, when nothing started, not even a sputter, they exchanged looks that held no rational explanation left in them. Something didn't want us to leave. The youngest student broke first. Backpack dropped, tears welling, breath fast and thin. He kept saying he heard Ethan calling during the night. Not pleading, inviting, whispering his name through the wall like water leaking through wood grain. He plugged his ears and still heard it, hummed to drown it and still felt it vibrating in bone. Another student swore she saw someone outside her window at 3 a.m., a silhouette standing in the tree line, not moving. just facing the cabin watching. Too tall for Ethan, limbs too long in proportion, but she couldn't see a face, just shape. Predators don't always chase. Sometimes they stand still so you come closer to understand. She didn't sleep after that. None of them did. You don't rest when you know the dark is awake. I tried comforting them, tried being the instructor, the authority, the anchor, but authority only works when rules still govern reality, and nothing here obeyed rules anymore. Fear spreads like mold. It had reached every surface of their thoughts now. We huddled inside the main cabin, the largest with reinforced walls and heavy windows. I latched the door, not because I believed wood could stop what lived in that cave, but because humans need barriers even when they're lies. A locked door feels safer than no door. A cabin feels safer than open earth. False, but necessary. The room felt tight. Lights off. We didn't discuss it, we just all felt the instinct that being visible was a mistake. Curtains pulled. Only daylight through cracks. The silence between us wasn't calm. It was tension held by thin threads. Everyone listened to something only fear could hear. The world outside breathing. Hours passed that felt like minutes. Or minutes that felt like hours. Time is loyal to the surface, not to places claimed by depth. Eventually, one voice broke the quiet. Asking the question none of us wanted to speak aloud. What if it doesn't let us go? The air shifted when he said it. Like speaking, fear gives it shape. Like a ripple moved through the cabin, the walls tightening, floorboards subtly creaking as if the land itself leaned closer to hear. Another student whispered that maybe we should make a run for it on foot. Run through the forest, follow the hills out of the valley, reach the road miles away. Logic argued against it. Rugged terrain, isolation, cliffs, but fear isn't logical. Survival instinct is loudest when options shrink. But nobody moved toward the woods because they all remembered the shape she saw in the trees. The valley wasn't a place anymore. It was a mouth. Then a sound cut through the wooden silence, distant, muffled, but unmistakable. A splash, followed by a ripple. Small, weak, like something breaking the surface of the lake. Everyone froze. Not one breath. Not one shift of weight, then a voice, not human clarity, not spoken language. Just tone, rhythm, the shape of speech without structure, like someone learning to talk again. Gurgling vowels dragged through water. Echoing across the valley in a soft, broken call. It called a name, not Ethan's. One of the students. The youngest. The one who cried. It spoke it wrong, warped, mispronounced, elongated wet syllables, but unmistakably his, like a child repeating a word it has only heard, never felt. He curled in on himself, hands over ears, trembling like strings pulled too tight. Tears streamed down his cheeks, but he didn't make a sound. Terror had stolen his voice. No one moved to comfort him. Fear isolates faster than grief. I stood slowly. Not bravery, resignation. The instructor instinct still lived somewhere in the wreckage of my thoughts. I peered through the slimmest crack in the curtain. The lake surface was still, too still, glass-like again, reflecting nothing. It wasn't water anymore, it was a lid. And just beyond the shoreline, near where the fog hugged the bank, something stood, not fully formed. Shape more than body, translucent edges, too tall, too thin. Head tilted, listening, waiting, patient. Like it didn't need to approach. Eventually we would come. Not a ghost. Not a hallucination. Something that learned human form the way caves learned to drip shapes from stone. A mimic of flesh without understanding bone. I closed the curtain softly. The others stared at me. They didn't need the explanation. Fear reads in silence what mouths cannot say. Someone whispered a prayer. Someone else whispered, "We're not supposed to be here." Not a complaint. A truth spoken too late. By afternoon, desperation replaced terror. Not hope. Hope was gone. What came instead was motion born from panic. We began packing without discussing it. Bags zipped, hands shaking, movements frantic. As if motion alone could break whatever unseen net held us here. Maybe if we pretended we could leave, the valley would let us. We gathered everything. Food, water, tools. No one cared about fairness or weight. We moved like survivors escaping a siege. As we prepared to step outside, I heard it again. Not splash. Not voice. Breathing. But this time, Not from the lake. From just outside the cabin wall. Slow inhalation. Long exhale. Like something enormous crouched inches from us, tasting the wood between us, waiting to see if we would step through. The sound stopped suddenly. Then a tap against the window, just one, not asking to come in, promising. Didn't open the door. I told everyone to stay. Away from windows, stay low. Stay silent. We waited. Fear thickened into something physical. A weight on our backs, pressing down as if gravity itself bent heavier here. Night approached again, sunlight draining like blood leaving a body. The lake outside glimmered once more in the last line of dusk, not reflecting the sky, but glowing from within. Not a lure, a signal. Invitation renewed. I wrote one line in the logbook before darkness fully claimed the valley. We are not trapped here. We are being kept, and beneath it something out there wants company, and it has patience older than the stone. At dawn, the fog did not lift. It didn't drift or burn off or thin the way morning mist should. It held to the ground like it had grown roots, a white heavy curtain clinging to trees, grass, walls, breath. Sound moved strangely through it, muffled, swallowed. When we walked inside the cabin, shoes made no noise on the wood. Even fear felt quieter. The valley wasn't waking up today. It was waiting. I checked the students. Hollow eyes, sleeplessness, fidgeting hands. The kind of quiet bad trauma breeds. Nobody wanted food. Nobody spoke about leaving anymore. We all knew this place didn't care about plans. Then came the panic. The youngest, barely 20, snapped. Not slowly, not with warning. He just stood, breathing fast, eyes darting, then bolted for the door. Before anyone could stop him, he grabbed a kayak paddle that leaned near the entrance and sprinted toward the boathouse. Logic died in him. Only instinct remained. Escape or drown trying. We ran after him, but fog eats distance, and all we saw was a fading orange jacket swallowed by pale white air. His footsteps pounded wood, then faded into muffled nothingness. A door slammed somewhere, in the boathouse or nowhere. Hard to tell. Seconds later, the sound returned. Not footsteps. Water. Splash. Another. Then a frantic scraping. Oar against boat. Paddle against hull. Blind motion. Then the thud of wood on still water. I reached the shore just as his kayak slid from the boathouse into the lake. A lone orange streak drifting into a gray world. He paddled like a man chased by fire, each stroke desperate, splashing more air than water. He wasn't aiming. He was fleeing. Fog parted slightly as he moved, and the lake surface looked wrong again. Not flat. Not rippling, breathing, a pulse. A slow tidal swell that wasn't wind or physics or nature. The surface lifted and sank like a chest inhaling. His kayak rocked. I shouted for him to stop paddling. Don't move. Don't make sound, don't draw attention. But sound died in the fog, eaten before it reached him. He didn't hear. Or maybe he did and panic drowned it. He paddled harder, voice cracking, pleading into the mist for someone, anyone, to help him. His voice echoed strangely, bouncing off nothing, coming back wrong, not his tone. Something deeper under it, like a second voice repeating him a half-second behind. Mocking. Learning. Then the lake inhaled again. A faint glow flickered beneath his boat. Pale, diffuse, soft like moonlight under milk. It didn't surge up. It didn't attack. It hovered, waiting for him to see it. He stopped paddling. His shoulders slumped. Breath slowed. Panic gone in an instant, replaced by something worse, calm. Calm so sudden it felt predatory. He leaned over the side of the kayak as if peering into an inviting secret. Like he heard something gentle. Like the water whispered him closer. Then the surface broke, not violently, no splash. No thrashing spray. Just two pale shapes rising beneath the boat. Long arms unfurling, fingers webbed, or too many or both. Joints bending wrong. Movements liquid and deliberate. One hand slid over the bow of the kayak. Slow, tender. Like guiding someone forward, not pulling them back. He didn't scream. That was the worst part. He exhaled softly, like relief. Like surrender. The kayak tipped, no jerk, no fight, just a quiet roll as he slipped into the water willingly. The glow brightened once. Then everything went still. The kayak drifted. Empty. Ripples spread, slow, rhythmic, almost reverent, as if the lake savored another addition to whatever lived inside it. My legs refused to move for several seconds. The other students froze at the shoreline behind me, horror carved into their faces. But horror is loud. What we felt was quieter. The silence after surrender is the heaviest silence in the world. No bubbles rose. No hand broke the surface. No struggle. He did not drown. He was taken or claimed. When I finally backed away, body weak, lungs shaking, the fog shifted slightly. And through it, just beyond the boathouse, I saw a shape standing at the waterline. Tall, narrow, still. I blinked. It vanished. Not retreated, vanished like fog swallowed it whole. We returned to the cabin without speaking. Nobody tried to run now. Fear had evolved into something else, belief. We no longer doubted what hunted us. We doubted ourselves for ever thinking we could leave. Inside, someone vomited quietly. Another sat rocking silently on the floor. The third stared at the door like expecting a knock at any moment. I sat at the table, dripping lake water, trying to keep my breathing steady. My logbook lay open, pen beside it. I didn't want to write. Writing made things real. But survival isn't only physical. It's remembering what truth looks like when fear tries to rewrite the world. I forced my hand to move. He didn't panic. He accepted it, a pause. Then it doesn't attack. It invites. I didn't write the thought that followed, because it scared me too much. Invitations are only extended when the host already owns the room. Outside, the lake went still again, waiting. The valley exhaled softly, like satisfied. And somewhere deep below the surface, another voice joined the chorus calling our names. We were no longer a dive group. We were a dwindling inventory, and the dark had patience left in endless reserve. There comes a point in fear where running stops making sense, not because hope returns, but because you finally understand the boundaries of the cage. We weren't escaping this valley, not on foot, not on water, not with prayer or denial. This place didn't operate on geography anymore. It operated on attention. It had ours. The remaining students watched me gather gear with hollow eyes. No questions, no protests, not even whispered pleas to stay. They already knew the truth. Someone had to go back down. Someone had to see, to face it, to try to understand what we were dealing with. And in caves, the instructor always goes first. I checked my lines, regulators, lights, reels, movements precise, steady, the muscle memory of a lifetime. But what drove me now wasn't duty, it was inevitability. We crossed the threshold of survival days ago. Now we were in territory belonging to something else, something patient, something that doesn't compete. It waits. The two remaining students hugged themselves near the window, staring through fog so thick it looked like the world outside was dissolving. Their faces said everything. If I didn't come back, they wouldn't last long anyway. I stepped onto the dock. The water waited, still as a mirror. Fog pressed low over the lake like a lid sealing something beneath. My reflection stared back, pale and distorted. Eyes too dark, face drawn, breath visible in the cold air. I whispered a single rule, not for safety, but to anchor myself to a world that once made sense. Follow the line. Don't follow the light. Then I went into the water. Descent is supposed to feel like falling into sleep, weight fading, sound folding inward. This time it felt like surrendering to a mouth. Pressure wrapped around me, almost tender, the way an anaconda constricts. Slow, patient, inevitable. The first chamber greeted me with perfect clarity again. No silt, no disturbance. Purity and stillness, like the cave had scrubbed itself clean after feeding. I moved deeper. At Ethan's cut line, I paused. It floated motionless like a vein severed mid-pulse. I clipped my reel to the main guideline. I wasn't here to rescue him. Even the illusion of rescue had dissolved. I was here to confront what lived where light should never exist. The water around me vibrated. That same hum, like breath felt in bone. No voice, not yet. Just presence, thick and ancient, coiling through the water like a sound older than language. Then I saw it. Not the glow. The crack in the wall again. Newly open, wider than before. Like stone softened, parted, inviting passage. A living cave. My beam cut inside, revealing the graveyard of gear, bones, straps, metal, fabric clinging to mineral. The offerings divers leave when they surrender without knowing they're offering anything. I moved deeper. Narrow passage squeezing my tank, scraping my shoulders. Psychological claustrophobia is the first threat in tight systems. But this wasn't psychological anymore. The cave pulsed again, alive. I entered the inner chamber. It was bigger than I expected, vault-like, cathedral quiet. The water here felt warmer, unnaturally, like the cave had a core, a heartbeat, a metabolism. Then I saw movement. Something long drifted past the edge of my beam, pale, boneless in motion. Not fish, not human, not anything that evolved under sunlight. My light caught another shape drifting behind it. Humanoid outline, arms too long, fingers webbed or torn, head bulbous and featureless except for two pale orbs. Not glowing. Reflecting my beam eyes, it watched me, not hostile, patient. Then another emerged beside it. And another. Not a swarm, no frenzy. Just presence. Observing me as though curious what form I would take when I finally sank here. Their bodies glistened like drowned flesh, calcified and softened at once. Skin pale as cavestone, limbs tapering into fluid motions. Where feet should be, nothing solid. Something between fin and shadow. Human once. Perhaps. Not anymore. The cave wasn't killing divers. It was reforming them. A soft pulse rippled through the chamber and they turned, synchronized. Slow, reverent, toward the back of the cavern. Toward something unseen, deeper and black. Something bigger. Something ancient enough not to move quickly. I felt it before I saw anything. Pressure behind my eyes. A weight on my lungs like a second diaphragm trying to guide my breath. An intelligence not hunting. Not stalking, considering. The glow appeared, not a point of light. A curtain of it. Thin, soft, rippling like moonlight diffused through silk underwater. But it wasn't illumination. It was suggestion. An idea of light. My brain wanted to swim toward it before I even processed the urge. I felt the line under my glove, taut, grounding me. A rope is such a small thing. Thin, synthetic, laughable. Yet it kept me human in that moment. A single taut thread against a god's patience. The glow dimmed slightly. Not frustrated. Inviting. Come see. Come learn. Come become. My heartbeat stumbled. Thoughts warped. The edges of fear softened, not gone, just irrelevant. Like fear was for surface creatures. Down here there was belonging. Then I felt a pull on the line, not physical, mental. A suggestion to unclasp my tether. Just one movement. Just release. It would be so easy. For a moment. I almost did. Then memory slammed into me unbidden. Claw marks in stone, dive belts fused into mineral. Human teeth pressed into rock like fossils of desperation. They didn't drown. They changed after they accepted. I yanked backward. Hard. Silt erupted. The chamber clouded instantly. Light died into milk-thick fog. Vision gone. Breath shaky. Heart a hammer in ribs. The line. Follow the line. Hand over hand, I backed through the tunnel. Something brushed my fin again, gentle, encouraging, not attack. Guidance, don't retreat. Come back, pressure in my skull spiked. Thoughts dulled. My name echoed faintly in my regulator vibrations. Not spoken, but known. I kept moving. At the main chamber, water temperature dropped sharply. My head cleared like emerging from anesthesia. Panic flooded in then. Pure, clean human fear. I ascended fast. Too fast. Bubbles roared past. Depth gauge climbed. I didn't care. A decompression hit as mercy compared to being remade by a thinking darkness. Breaking the surface felt like being born wrong. I ripped my mask off, gasping. Lake still. Fog thick. Cabin windows dim in distance. But the silence was different now. Not waiting. Listening. I staggered to shore, ripping gear off before I even reached the dock. Hands shaking hard now. Knees weak. Heart beating wrong, too big for my chest. Inside the cabin, the students looked at me like they were already grieving. I didn't tell them what I saw. I didn't need to. They saw it in my eyes. Instead, I wrote one line in the logbook. It doesn't lure you because it's evil. It lures you because it's alone. Then beneath it, and it wants us to join it. Outside, the fog pulsed once, like breath. We had run out of time. Night swallowed the valley fast as if sunlight retreated out of fear instead of cycle. No stars, no moon. Only fog and a darkness thick enough to feel on skin. The students didn't speak anymore. They sat hunched in the corner, wrapped in blankets, though the air wasn't cold. People break in different ways. Some scream, some fight, some shrink until they barely breathe. These two had entered the shrinking phase. I stood by the window, staring at the lake through a sliver in the curtain. The world outside looked like a dream half remembered, soft, colorless, unreal. If I hadn't seen what I saw below, I would have doubted reality itself. But I had seen it, and memory is a cage once truth enters. The water rippled without wind, a pulse, deliberate, like a signal. The other student whispered behind me, "Don't go back out there." They thought I was thinking of diving again. I wasn't. I was thinking about the thing deeper in the cave. The smaller ones circled like priests around an altar. The presence that didn't move, didn't chase, didn't blink. The consciousness that felt ancient, enough to predate stone itself. They weren't creatures. They were stages. The forms drifting through the chamber weren't final. They were becoming. And there was something they were becoming into. Something bigger. Something waiting. A soft knock came at the door. 3 taps, slow, deliberate. The kind someone makes when they already know you will answer. Eventually, the students froze. Breaths caught in their throats. I didn't move. Doors don't protect against a thing that doesn't need to enter to reach you, I whispered, barely audible. Stay quiet. Then footsteps moved along the porch. Bare, wet, flesh dragging softly across wood. A shadow passed the window, elongated limbs, spine arched, movement smooth like drifting underwater though it stood on land. It paused near the glass. I felt it listening. Not for noise, breath, thought, intention. It was searching for cracks in our minds, not our walls. Something scraped the wood. Long nails, bone, webbing, then silence, and then another sound. Something I never imagined could exist here. Bubbling, not boiling, not air. Skin rupturing, gills opening, a low organic churn like flesh reforming, like something adjusting shape, becoming more suitable for surface air. They were learning to stand here, they were learning us. I backed away from the window slowly, pulse loud enough to drown my hearing. Fear doesn't just rise, it spreads, climbing spine, tightening throat, turning time thick and slow. The scraping stopped. Silence again, then a whisper. Not through air, not through wood, but in water. My brain vibrated with it, like a current inside bone marrow. Join. My knees almost buckled. I clenched the table edge to stay grounded. Then the lake answered. Not a splash, no dramatic eruption, just movement. Dozens of shapes shifting beneath the surface. Their silhouettes faint through fog, gliding with the grace of things that never knew gravity. I thought of Ethan, of the boy in the kayak, of the divers from old logbooks. They were not gone. They were learning a new shape, absorbed, broken down, and rebuilt. A language of transformation, a religion of drowning rewritten into elevation. The students trembled. One rocked slowly, muttering to himself. The other clutched her knees so tightly her knuckles bled. I knew what they were thinking, not escape, not fight, not scream, resist, hold on to humanity. For as long as human meant anything, I left them in the cabin. Not abandonment, preparation. I needed to understand how final this was. Outside, fog hugged the ground like a living blanket. The air buzzed with pressure, not sound pressure. The kind caves make when they breathe, but now above ground. I walked toward the shore. Not bravely, not foolishly, simply because dread without action becomes madness. At the edge of the water, I saw them, not silhouettes now, forms breaching the surface like emerging gods. Pale limbs rising, dripping, spines arching, heads tipped in unnatural curiosity. Their eyes, hollow, reflective, infinite, tracked my every breath. I counted 8 at first. Then more rose behind them. They stood half submerged, bodies rippling between human and not. Muscles wrong, limbs too slender then too thick, skin shifting like wet clay breathing. One moved closer, water parted silently. Not swimming, gliding, as if the lake carried it instead of obeying physics. It stopped only feet from shore, staring at me with a patience so intense it burned. Then the water behind it stirred. Slowly, reverently, like curtains opening in a cathedral, something enormous shifted below, size beyond comprehension. A mass older than this valley. Not a body, foundation. A shape carved by evolution or something older than evolution. A presence whose hunger was not cruelty but inevitability, the way the ocean does not hate the ships it sinks. The water bulged upward, not surfacing, breathing, and then, eyes opened beneath the surface, impossible scale. Orb-like luminous without light, depthless, staring not at me but through me, as if evaluating where to place me in its growing design. The smaller ones bowed their heads in water, synchronized. Like worshippers acknowledging their god, I couldn't breathe, not from fear, from awe, terrible awe. Old religions speak of gods in the deep. They were not metaphor. They were memory. This thing didn't want us dead. It wanted us evolved. Humanity wasn't prey. It was potential. Something brushed my ankle, gentle, curious. Fingers, tendrils, a greeting, an invitation. My mind fractured in two directions. Part wanted to join, to surrender, to stop fighting gravity, life, breath, to melt into something older, wider, eternal. Part wanted to scream and run and burn this valley to ash. The entity did not rush. That's how I knew the truth. Nothing escapes patience this old. Nothing leaves unless it is released, and we were not being released. Not yet. I staggered backward. The shapes watched, unblinking. No anger, no chase. They had no need to chase. Fear keeps us here as effectively as any cage. The students waited inside when I returned. They looked up with a sliver of desperate hope, searching my face for salvation. I gave them neither hope nor despair, only truth. They're not trying to kill us, I whispered. They're waiting for us to be ready. The room went very still. We were not prey, we were unfinished. When prey finally understands its cage, instinct splits in two directions: surrender or escape. The creatures in the lake, whatever they were becoming, knew that. That's why they didn't attack. Fear is a boundary as strong as stone walls, but the human mind breaks unevenly, and broken minds still run. We had one chance left. Get out before our thoughts dissolve too. No ceremony, no farewell speeches, just necessity. Dawn bled pale through the fog, weak and hesitant, like light afraid to intrude. The students were silent as I prepped gear again. This time not for another descent, not for confrontation, for escape. I packed only essentials: dive lights, line, first aid, thermal blanket, flares. Equipment that belonged to survival on land, not underwater. Wetsuit half-zipped, knife strapped to thigh. My breath felt wrong, too loud, too mortal. The students clung to their bags like flotation devices. Hope and terror mixed into one fragile instinct. Flee before thought becomes invitation. We chose land. Water wasn't travel anymore, it was threshold. The valley walls were steep, forest thick, terrain brutal. But people have crawled out of worse places on bleeding hands. And the creatures were learning land. We couldn't wait for them to learn patience. We stepped off the dock. The world reacted immediately. Fog shifted. Not random, but like something exhaled. Trees swayed through wind, didn't touch the leaves. The entire valley felt aware, like nerves lay under earth instead of roots. Something stirred below the lake. Slow, deep, resonant. The water didn't ripple. It throbbed. I didn't look back. We moved into the tree line, branches whipped at our suits, pine needles cracking under boots. No birds, no insects, no breathing except ours. The air felt thick, like humidity mixed with static. My body pushed forward, but my mind felt dragged, like thought itself was tethered to the lake. The forest resisted us. Roots twisted like trip lines. Branches hung too low, clawing at gear. We pressed on anyway. Humans aren't made of instinct alone, we're made of refusal. 20 minutes in, the younger student gasped, grabbing my arm. His eyes wide, not fear, recognition. A shape moved between trunks, thin, pale, pacing us. Not fully formed, skin like moist stone, limbs moving with the wrong bend. Head canted in fascination. Watching. Another figure drifted near it, gliding instead of stepping. Then a third. Not pursuing, escorting, guiding us or herding. The woods closed tighter around us. Trees leaned, branches bowed. The air thickened. The younger student began trembling, muttering, shaking his head like trying to hold his thoughts inside before something else slipped in. Don't look at them. I whispered. "Just move." He nodded, but his eyes flicked sideways anyway. Curiosity is instinct too. His panic broke fast. He screamed. Loud, sharp, raw. The forest answered, not with echo, with presence. A pale hand reached low from behind a tree. Too many knuckles. Wrist flexing wrong. Then another figure shifted its shape, torso elongating as though anatomy was clay. The older student grabbed his wrist, dragging him. We ran, branches slicing arms, mud pulling at boots, time fractured into breath and heartbeat and pulse roaring in ears. Behind us, shapes kept pace, no urgency, no hunting posture, just patient movement. A shepherd does not chase the flock. It waits for exhaustion. I stumbled over a root, palms slamming soil. When I pushed up, my hand hit something soft under leaves. Fabric, not leaves. Not moss, a decayed wetsuit sleeve, half buried in dirt, with bone inside, dozens more around it. Bits of nylon, metal buckles. Tanks rusted into earth, dive masks fused to roots. The forest floor was seeded with divers like mushrooms after rain. This valley wasn't a hunting ground, it was a nursery, a place where old versions were discarded. When new ones emerged, the younger student choked on a sob, collapsing. His voice cracked. No scream this time, just a single breaking sound. Then he went still, too still. His inhalation slowed. His pupils dilated. Breath softened like he was falling asleep in the middle of panic. Hypnotized. No. Claimed. I grabbed his jacket, shaking him. His head rolled, eyes unfocused, mouth slack, like he was listening to something we couldn't hear. The older student backed away, clutching her hair, whispering, "No, no." No, like she was trying to convince the world to reverse itself. A sound answered her, from the valley below. A low resonance, not roar, not call, summon. Her knees buckled. I had to choose. Drag two bodies and lose all three of us? Or save one? Cowardice and leadership share the same face sometimes. I grabbed the older student by the wrist and forced her forward. We ran, we left him, and the valley accepted our choice. The forest shifted again, this time violently. Branches snapped down, vines tightened. The path folded like the land itself tried to swallow us back. The student cried but kept running. Her terror became fuel. My own lungs burned, each breath knives, but adrenaline made pain background noise. Finally, we broke into a clearing. For one brief second, hope flared. Trees thinned. Slope brightened. The open ridge, freedom, then we saw it. The clearing wasn't escape. It was the lake. Fog parted. Around the water like curtains being drawn, we had run in a perfect circle, returned. Like a magnet dropped near iron, my knees gave under the realization. The student sobbed in defeat. The sound ripped out of her, brutal and helpless. Then she froze mid-cry, head turning slowly toward the water as though someone whispered her name in the air. I grabbed her, forcing her gaze away, gripping her jaw so she couldn't turn back toward the shore. Her pupils fluttered. She was slipping. Not physically, mentally, emotion first, then thought. Then will something moved at the shoreline, forms rising, not threatening, waiting, inviting. My body shook, not from fatigue, but from the quiet horror of knowing victory for them was not violence. It was patience. I dragged her back toward the cabin, but every step felt wrong. Like gravity had reversed, like the valley itself wanted us crawling home. When we reached the cabin door, she collapsed, silent, breathing slow, fingers twitching like adjusting to a new rhythm. I sealed the door. We were not running anymore. Running is for things with futures. Inside, I wrote with a shaking hand, escape is not blocked by barriers. Escape is blocked by acceptance. Then, below, they don't chase because they don't have to. We are already inside them. The student lay on the floor, staring blankly. Fog pressed at the windows like hands. We weren't escaping, we were ripening. There's a moment when terror burns itself out and what remains isn't bravery, just a numb instinct to move. I had reached that point. The student lay on the cabin floor staring at nothing, breath slow, mind already drifting toward the lake's rhythm. Her body was here. Her thoughts were being walked elsewhere. I knelt beside her and shook her shoulder. Look at me. She didn't, her eyes flicked sideways toward the mist-veiled lake. Like gravity had a direction and it wasn't down anymore. Humanity leaves the mind before it leaves the body. I slapped her, hard enough my palm stung. Her eyes snapped open with a small gasp. A second of clarity. A second where she remembered breath and fear and self. Then she exhaled and the fog returned to her gaze like water filling lungs. I couldn't save her by force. Force only works on flesh. Whatever claimed her lived deeper. The knocking returned, not at the door this time, under the cabin floor. Wet wood flexed beneath us. A board popped. The structure groaned, low and slow, like something beneath shifted up against the beams, pressing its weight, reminding us the lake didn't end at the shoreline. The water wasn't outside, it was under everything. The student trembled. Not fear, anticipation. Some part of her welcomed the weight rising underfoot. I grabbed my gear bag. No plan, no hope, just movement. Stagnation was surrender. "We move," I whispered. "If we stop thinking, we stop being." Her lips parted. Words crawled out slow and warped, like memory struggling through sludge. "They're calling." I didn't argue. Truth didn't matter here. Action did. I dragged her upright. Her limbs resisted, not physically, mentally. Like her body needed permission from something unseen to obey gravity instead of water. I forced her toward the door and we slipped outside into air thick as soup. The valley was breathing again. The whole place pulsing, faint but unmistakable. Fog curled around us like fingers. Trees leaned like listeners. We stumbled through brush, not running. Running draws attention. Moving quietly, fast as we could, hearts pounding. The ground underfoot felt wrong, spongy, moist, as though the soil was thinning and water pushed up beneath it like veins throbbing. Behind us, something moved in the fog. Not footsteps gliding. Many bodies. Slow. Patient. Confidence of predators who don't rush prey already circling the drain. We reached the ridge, where escape should have been. But the tree line wrapped wrong, bent inward, forming a funnel leading toward the lake like the whole forest rearranged itself for a migration path. A path back, no exits, no randomness. Just design. I pulled the student left. She resisted, feet dragging toward the water like magnet and steel. Her breathing synced with a rhythm I could feel vibrating the ground, a heartbeat too deep to be earth and too slow to be human. I slapped her again, harder, a gasp, a second of self. I dragged her through thorn and mud. Branches snapped behind us, quiet, deliberate, not chase. Guidance. They didn't need to drag us. They just needed to close every path but the right one. We broke through brush and saw the lake again, flat as polished obsidian. Shapes stood at the edge, half submerged like pale reeds, silent observers. They didn't move toward us, they didn't have to. The student let go of my wrist. No struggle, no cry, just release. She stepped toward the shore like a sleepwalker walking off a rooftop. I grabbed her jacket, yanked hard. Fight. She didn't look at me. Her voice drifted soft, hollow. It's peaceful. Peace is the most dangerous weapon in the dark. Something surfaced 30 feet offshore. Not a shape, not full, just outlined beneath water. Vast, wrong geometry, smooth curves, slow motion. The entity breathed and the fog thickened, as if it inhaled air and exhaled invitation. The student leaned forward. I held her until her muscles stopped moving, not because she fought, because she stopped caring. For a second, I nearly leaned too, just ease. No fear, no struggle. A surrender older than religion. Then a rule sparked in memory like flint. Never follow the extra light. But there was no light now. There was choice. Choice is sharper than warnings. I turned away, physically wrenching my head. Because sight was gravity, I dragged her, dead weight now. Not dead, consumed in thought. She wasn't resisting. She was leaving without moving. The forest behind us rustled. Not wind, anticipation. I pulled the emergency flare from my bag and struck it. Red fire erupted. The valley recoiled. Fog peeled backward like skin from flame. The shapes near the lake leaned away, not in fear, in irritation. Like someone flipped on a light in a cave full of sleeping things. Fire didn't scare them. It disrupted atmosphere, balance, the quiet ritual. For 1 second, the spell cracked. The student's gaze snapped back to life. Air gulping into lungs like near drowners do at surface. I pulled her into the trees. We stumbled in raw panic now, flare spitting sparks, forest hissing with reactions we couldn't see. The ridge reappeared, the real one, not a loop, not a lure, We clawed upward, hands tearing, bodies shaking, something behind moving faster now, not gliding, closing. They didn't chase until fight existed. They respected struggle, or despised it. Branches whipped. Earth shifted. For a moment I felt water under soil again, like something underneath rose with us, following in subterranean parallel. We climbed. Finally, a break in the trees. Sky. Real sky. Not fog, not reflection. Gray and bleak but open. I turned back once. A figure stood at the tree line. Pale. Still. Not pursuing. Watching. Waiting. Head cocked. Hands open in something like invitation or patience. Behind it, deeper shapes trembled like a school of fish adjusting formation. And far down, near the lake center, faint and smaller than before, not victory, not defeat, but promise. The water pulsed once. The student collapsed on the ridge, sobbing, shaking violently. I dropped beside her, chest heaving, lungs burning, hands raw. My body trembled uncontrollably. We weren't safe. We were simply not theirs yet. The valley exhaled behind us. I felt it, and I knew. None of them were angry. Why would they be? Every tide returns. Fog curled around the trees below, closing the valley's throat. I wrote in the dirt with a shaking finger, escape is temporary. Then below, the light wasn't the trap. The invitation was, we didn't speak. There was nothing left to say, only to climb. Before thought softened again, before the valley breathed us back. We didn't celebrate the moment we cleared the ridge. No cheering, no collapse into grateful tears, no triumphant breath of freedom. Survival wasn't a victory here. It felt like trespass. The world beyond the tree line looked almost normal. Gray sky, wind-moving branches, damp earth. But normalcy felt suspicious now, like camouflage over something watching. We kept climbing, too scared to stop. The student stumbled beside me, legs shaking, breath shallow and animal fast. Her eyes jittered as if trying to track thoughts instead of sights. We weren't running from a place, we were running from a pull. I didn't dare look back, but I felt it. An invisible thread stretching behind us, miles long, unbreakable. Not a leash, a memory, a claim. The ridge widened into a dirt road. Old, half-collapsed, barely visible beneath leaves and moss. A hunter's trail, maybe, or a route abandoned because people sensed what lived below, even if they didn't know. We followed it on instinct. No plan, just distance. Distance like drowning victims claw for air that may not exist. Every few minutes, the student muttered, "Don't look. Don't look." I didn't know whether she meant behind us or inward. Branches thinned. Light filtered pale and thin. Somewhere far behind, the valley exhaled. Subtle. Felt more than heard. A cavernous sigh like a tide rolling back. We reached the first sign of human presence in days. A rust-streaked Forest Service post, half-collapsed, map boards rotting. The kind hikers see and ignore, a piece of civilization so small it barely counted, but it meant we had crossed a boundary. We stepped into its clearing like stepping onto sacred ground. The student fell to her knees. Not from exhaustion, from disbelief. "We're out," she whispered. "We're out." I didn't answer. Out didn't feel like out. The world seemed too still. Wind passed, but air didn't feel free. It felt like a held breath had been let go deliberately. As if permission granted, not escape earned. As if something had decided, not yet. We moved again, slowly, mechanically. If we stopped, if we allowed relief to flood us, the valley might open its jaws again. After a mile, we reached asphalt, a road, faded paint lines, cracked surface. Civilization's promise, the student sobbed, laughter mixing with fear, the way panic sometimes flips into euphoria. I let myself breathe for the first time in what felt like centuries. Then I felt it, like cold fingers pressing. The back of my neck, not touch memory, the lake still lived behind my eyelids. Those pale forms rising, that enormous presence beneath, the invitation wearing the shape of light and calm. Something in me hadn't left the water. We flagged down a passing car, a dusty pickup, startled driver blinking at two soaked, mud-smeared figures stumbling out of forest like revenants. He asked what happened. I couldn't answer. Words didn't fit what we saw. The world above doesn't have vocabulary for ancient hunger that evolves instead of hunts. He helped us in, drove us. Distance placed like bricks between us and that valley, but dread stayed rooted in marrow. At a ranger station, radios worked. Phones connected, paramedics came. People spoke with concern, logic, protocol. Their voices sounded so small. Doctors checked vitals. Police asked questions. We answered nothing real because truth would be escorted to a psychiatric ward, not a rescue team. A police officer said they'd go search the lake area. My blood went cold. I grabbed his wrist. Don't go near the water. He mistook it for trauma. He wasn't wrong. Hours blurred. Emergency blankets, clipboards, floodlights, human noise. The student clung to my sleeve like a drifting child. Every time someone mentioned back there, she flinched. I did too. Distance meant nothing when memory still whispered. Eventually, they separated us for evaluation, they said. For safety, they said. Humans categorize what they don't understand. While sitting alone in a fluorescent-lit hospital room, I stared at a cup of water beside the bed, clear, clean, harmless. It trembled just once, a tiny ripple. As if something exhaled below it, I shoved it away so hard the cup tipped. A nurse entered moments later. Asked if I was all right. I nodded. She didn't see the puddle creeping toward the edge of the table like a reaching hand. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every blink was dark water. Every heartbeat echoed slower, like sinking. My limbs felt heavier each hour. Like gravity shifting. Pulling down, yes, but toward depth, not earth. My ears rang faintly, a familiar hum, a pressure in the skull. I forced myself to stand, gripping the counter. My own reflection in the window looked pale, hollow-eyed. Wrong around the edges, and for one terrifying second, my pupils glinted white, not reflected light, internal. A flicker. Gone in a blink. My breath caught. I felt the pull again, soft, patient, inevitable, not a command, a reminder. I whispered aloud. Voice cracking like frost under weight. Never follow the extra light. But the voice in my skull wasn't light. It was a tide, and tides always return. Outside the window, far in the distance, night clouds parted briefly over unseen mountains. In that brief break, a shimmer, faint, pale, like a lantern underwater, far away. Too far to be real, but not far. Enough, it wasn't calling me back. It didn't need to. It knew I would return. Eventually, I have begun to understand the cave does not hunt. The water does not chase. The light does not deceive. We are the ones who mistake evolution for threat. We are the ones who call transformation terror. Down there, in that ancient dark, nothing dies. It becomes. And once you've been seen by the deep, you never really surface again. Hospitals are supposed to feel safe. Bright lights, constant footsteps, the hum of machines meant to keep bodies alive. But safety is a surface illusion. A thin blanket humans wrap around themselves to pretend the dark doesn't watch us breathing. I sat in the sterile room while doctors whispered outside my door. They spoke in controlled tones, soft as gauze, planning tests, trauma counseling, observation periods. They thought the danger lived in memory. They thought I escaped something external. They didn't understand I had carried it out with me. My skin felt tight, like I was drying from the outside while something inside remained ocean wet. My muscles twitched with slow underwater weight. Every inhale felt borrowed. Every exhale felt reluctant, like my body wasn't sure what environment it belonged to anymore. 2 days had passed, 2 days, and no one had drowned. No one had vanished. No pale figure pressed against windows. But the silence inside my skull told a different story. Silence is not absence. It is listening. Late afternoon, a detective visited. Polite, tired eyes. Notebook poised like a shield. He asked questions gently, confusion curdling beneath professionalism. Why we were there. What happened to the others. Why we fled instead of calling for help sooner. I gave half-truths. Lost diver, panic, terrain disorientation. No clear communication. Trauma fog. The words felt like stone in my mouth. Hard. Wrong. Heavy. He asked if I planned to go back. Something inside me tightened, like a thread pulling taut down my spine. Go back. I shook my head and lied with a voice too thin to trust. No. He left with furrowed brows. The nurse returned with warm blankets and a practiced kindness. She touched my wrist, pulse check, and her expression shifted just slightly. Confusion, then concern. Maybe my pulse didn't feel right. Maybe it beat too slow. Or not slow, deep. Like something breathing through bone instead of lung. I pulled my arm away gently. She smiled to hide uncertainty and walked out. When evening arrived, they brought the other surviving student in a wheelchair, escorted by a therapist. Her eyes darted, scanning corners, not for people, for edges, for openings, for reflections. She sat across from me in the common room like someone who didn't know if she was awake or dreaming stone passageways. Her voice came out as a whisper too soft for living places. "Do you hear it?" I didn't answer. Some truths are traps shaped like questions. Her fingers curled, tendons visible under thin skin. "It's quieter here," she murmured. "But quiet doesn't mean gone." I felt pressure behind my eyes again, like depth closing in. I clenched my jaw, swallowed hard. She watched me and shivered. "We didn't escape," she said. I didn't argue. Belief doesn't require opposition. A therapist asked us questions. Trauma processing, grounding exercises, breathing patterns meant for panic, not metamorphosis. He asked if we hallucinated underwater. I almost laughed. A short, strained exhale escaped instead. He wrote something down like that sound confirmed his theory. When we returned to our rooms, nighttime settled over the hospital like a lid over a jar. Hallway lights dimmed. Machines hummed. Distant carts rolled. Human routine marched on, unaware of the deep pulling at the edges of thought. I stared at the ceiling, pulse thudding like distant sonar. My fingers twitched. Nails felt softer. Skin felt colder, not sick, not failing, changing. A drop of water slid from my hairline down my temple. I hadn't showered. I hadn't sweated. It just formed, condensed. Like humidity inside my skull was leaking outward. I wiped it away. It came back moments later. I forced my breathing into human rhythm. Inhale, hold, exhale. But a part of me wanted to reverse it, breathe the way I remembered from beneath the cave ceiling. Exhale first, inhale later. Water breathes differently than air. Faint noise came from the sink. Drip, pause, drip. Covered my ears, but the dripping wasn't outside. It was memory echoing through brain tissue like sonar pinging through caverns. I whispered to myself, "You're here. You're human. Stay human." The window caught my reflection in the dark glass. My silhouette stood rigid, breath shallow. For a moment, the face staring back wasn't quite aligned. Pupils too reflective, skin too smooth at the edges, hair damp like lake water. A blink later, it was just me again. Just me, human. Mostly. Outside, rain began, a sudden downpour hitting pavement like applause from a crowd you can't see. Water running in streams, water calling through storm drain. Echoes like whispering from pipes, the pouring thunder, vibrated the building. I didn't hear thunder, I heard breathing, long, slow, rhythmic, familiar, like the valley had found a way to reach the sky. I forced myself to turn away from the window. Sleep was impossible, but lying down was the only defense humans pretend they have against night. Hours passed, or minutes. Time bent softly like currents. Somewhere down the hall, someone murmured in their sleep, 2 syllables watery and broken. Like a name spoken through a respirator, I recognized it, but I didn't turn to listen. Listening is following, and following is surrender. I repeated my rule one last time. Never follow the extra light, but in darkness, rules don't save you, only delay you. And somewhere deep behind my ribs, something answered, not in words but in certainty. It already knows where I sleep now, and water always finds what belongs to it.